If you're an American conservative, you know that the societal values we hold sacred are under attack. They are hanging in the balance. How can you protect those values? By staying informed. The Closing Argument will deliver news and supporting evidence you need to support and defend those values. Here's Paul Smith.
Good morning. This is Paul Smith, your host of The Closing Argument. In these podcasts, we discuss some of the important and controversial moral, political, and legal issues that affect us and our families today. Some of the things we discuss are not politically correct, but all of them are important, and we hope you enjoy this discussion. Today, I have with me my good friend, Rodney of New Windsor. How are you doing, Rodney?
I'm doing well.
Good. Now, we did a couple of podcasts before, and I'm glad to have you back. And today, our program is the first of two parts where we're going to talk about the serious economic damage caused by fanatical climate change policies. And we're recording this, basically, it's the 1st of July, 2022. And so the impetus for this today is the situation in our nation. The stock market has been down for a month. A lot of people lost a lot of money in stock. Inflation is up. We're at a 40-year high. Interest rates are up. Similarly, maybe, I don't know if it's a 40-year high, but they're way up. Everybody knows gas is up to about $5 a gallon. It's almost doubled since Biden took office. In fact, all prices are up because that's what happens when gas goes up.
And diesel fuel is up also in some places over $6. And that's the lifeblood of these truckers. And a lot of these independent truckers no longer can maintain their rigs, because I know when they were up in Hagerstown, the guy was saying he brought a load of building supplies up here and all for the whole week. It's going to make $1,000. So they're all going to work for the Walmarts and the other places where somebody else pays for the fuel.
Well, so we mentioned that because everybody is feeling it. This is probably going to have a major effect in the midterm elections in November. It's expected that the Republicans will retake the House and probably take the Senate. But this economic part of it is certainly a part of that dynamic. And as I have listened to the national discussion, I have not heard enough talk about the climate change policy's role in this. Now, there has been some. President Biden, for his part, has two things. One, he deflects as much as he can and puts it on Putin. And the other is he denies that it's going to continue and kind of denies that there's a problem. But what I want to get into is I want to make the point that these fanatical green policies, which are not scientifically based, are causing serious economic damage. So I want to remind everybody at this point, when Joe Biden was campaigning for the presidency, one of the things he said was he was going to destroy the fossil fuel industry, in different words. And one of the clips I've seen now recently is him getting up close to some young person and saying, "Do you see my eyes? I want you to know I am going to, end the fossil fuel industry." And when he was inaugurated, within a day or two, he announced that he wants to be the climate president. So he has swallowed the extremist climate change, extremist policy, basically hook, line, and sinker. And so he immediately began to implement those policies. We were discussing earlier, the very first day in office, he shut down the pipeline that would bring fuel down from Canada. And so did that stop the fuel from coming?
Didn't stop the fuel from coming. They just brought it a different way, which unfortunately is more expensive. And if you believe in climate change, it's actually more damaging, because diesel locomotives actually burn fossil fuel where pipelines don't burn anything. And Paul, I'll just tell you one thing, what we're talking about there, I'm not surprised. Most countries, not all countries, but most countries, Canada, their resources are trees and things. Countries' wealth or lack of wealth happens because of their taking advantage of their natural resources. And I have never understood what keeping our natural resources in the ground does for us when somebody else is going to take them out of the ground in a different place. Because if climate is the concern, like when Mount Vesuvius went over in Italy, that didn't matter. It went over in Italy, it had an effect on the whole world.
Well, you were telling me just a few minutes ago, you went down and at the naval base down there at the mouth of the Chesapeake and saw a gigantic pile of coal.
Well, that's going over to China. They don't scrub it like we do when they burn it. So it's going to pollute more. I mean, it's just the way it is. The politicians count on the ignorance of the American people and the lack of knowledge in science in many areas.
So what that is, that's absolutely stupid. We would be better off cleaning it, burning it here than shipping it to the Chinese, who are our competitor and adversary, and where they're going to do more damage than we would do. This is absolutely crazy. And it's driven by the fanatics.
It's driven by the fanatics, and the fanatics, I mean, they keep changing the story, and I've been through this before. They'll come up with anything to change the story, because it was like one time they were pro-abortion. That didn't work because they become pro-choice. They changed that term, and they always change the terms on things because they're not pro-choice, because they don't want me to have my guns.
Right.
It has nothing to do with pro-choice. So they will change the terms. But when you shut down a country from taking advantage of its natural resources, and this affects farmers and everybody, we make money off of crops. Those tractors are not electric. You've got to have fuel for those tractors. So why are our food prices going up? Because the people who run the farms are now costing more to run the farms.
Well, before President Obama won his first presidential election, this is in 2008, at that time, Roy Innis, who was a civil rights activist, who has since died, he was a strong opponent of the Green New Deal policies, because he said these policies are what he called racial, what was the word he used? Forget the word. Anyway, it's not racial. They're racially prejudiced.
Prejudice, discrimination.
And that's it. Because he says if you enact these policies that will shut off fossil fuels, he says we don't have an alternative fuel supply to handle it. And he says what will happen is it's the poor, the minorities, and the undeveloped countries are going to feel the brunt of this. The more wealthy people, they'll survive. So he called it energy racism. And then he died, and Obama nevertheless kind of went forward with his climate change policies. They kind of stopped during Trump's 4 years, but now with Biden, who initially, right off the bat, implemented them. Now, the interesting thing that I noticed about what's going on today, there should be an admission by the Biden administration that if his policies were true, if his climate change policies were true, he should say this: look, we're going to stop producing fossil fuel. It's going to hurt everybody for a long time. You just got to recognize that, but it'll save the planet. Now, that's what they ought to say. They don't even say it. They just avoid it. Frankly, even if they said it, it would be wrong, because there is not a danger of this happening.
Well, because we haven't stopped using fossil fuels. So now we're bringing them over from Europe, from Russia. We're bringing in. We haven't stopped using anything. We just stopped using ours. So to me, it's kind of like, okay, I'm not doing this. I'm doing that. It's a shell game because you still haven't shut anything down. I would challenge any administration, open everything back up for 2 years. And if the economy isn't booming, then I'll buy your agreement and we'll shut things down. And they will not do that, because I guarantee you, because whether you like Trump or not, he proved that when you open things up and let the American freedom and economy go, nobody can come close.
Now, I would say in the next 20, 30, 40 years, we do need to reach some alternative energy solutions. We need to develop things such as has happened with the telephone, for example. We now have developed batteries and we're able to operate sophisticated electronic equipment with smaller batteries. And there have been many economic developments, and we need more of them. But we're not there yet.
Yeah, but why do we think that the future generations are stupid? I've said this before. It's kind of like George Washington saying, we got to quit cutting down trees so our ancestors 200 years from now will have logs for their log cabins to burn in their fireplaces. We have made so much progress in the last 40 years, 50 years, that I personally believe that those that come on after us will resolve the energy problems. And I can tell you my personal feelings on some of those energy things. And I'm not unique on this. I heard somebody, and they're always on late at night, the ultimate solution to clean energy is the hydrogen fuel cell. Because when you burn hydrogen, you make water. There's nothing polluting about that. The thing that's nice about that, hydrogen is 2 parts of water. It's the most abundant substance on Earth. The second most abundant substance on Earth is called silicon dioxide. We call it sand. Mm-hmm. That's what makes the silicon for the photocells. The photocells generate the electricity to separate the water into hydrogen and oxygen. That is the ultimate thing. There's not enough lithium. There's not enough stuff for these electric cars. And you can fill a hydrogen-fueled car just as fast as you can fill a gasoline-filled car, and you don't have to wait 3 hours.
So maybe we will have this type of development. I remember, 40 or 50 years ago when I was in college, there was discussion of developing hydrogen cars.
We could do that. We could do that now if they would push it instead of pushing the stupid stuff they're pushing now, because it's an agenda. I don't think they want the economy to boom.
All right. So here, where we are right now, we are on the verge of having a recession. Maybe we're not there yet, but everybody knows things are really pretty bad because they all know the price of gas is just about double. But we should be debating whether this climate change movement is legitimate. There still is no public debate about that. Not on conservative radio, nowhere. The left does not want to debate it. I wish the conservative people would, because since 2008, there have been a number of books that refute the science on this. Now, I've followed this for many years, as have you. And in 2008, when Congress issued this report I'm going to tell you about, at that point, there had not been many books that you could access that exposed the fraud, but there are now. Let me mention this right now. In 2008, November 19th, so it's just a couple of weeks after Obama was elected, before he was inaugurated, the House Select Committee on Energy Independence and Global Warming issued a report about global warming, and it continues to be the blueprint for Biden and others. It was issued by a slim majority. There were 233 Democrats to 202 Republicans. So they called their report a consensus, but this is just the first of a dozen false conclusions that they make in the report. Any consensus that exists about human-caused climate change is just a partisan consensus. It's just a political consensus, not a scientific consensus. But I want to mention some things in that report, because this is kind of the foundation that President Biden and others are dealing with. They state this in this House report, quote, "A clear scientific consensus now holds that global warming is happening, that man-made greenhouse gas emissions are largely responsible, and that failure to dramatically reduce those emissions in the coming decades will result in catastrophic impacts." We have been through that before in some of the other podcasts, and frankly, that is false in many respects. The science does not prove that. The prediction is wrong. But then they conclude also that the scientific debate on the cause of climate change is now over. So they refuse to debate it.
Of course, they are going to claim it's over, because my question is pretty much everything in science, I can go back and cite it. It's written up, it's peer reviewed. show me the peer reviews, because Congress declares something has never made it true.